He cheated with his secretary and planned to leave me with nothing, but it's not that easy. The day I discovered my husband was planning to leave me, I was shopping for his birthday present. It's funny how life works. There I was, agonizing over whether to buy Kevin the limited edition watch he'd been eyeing or tickets to the Masters golf tournament, while he was plotting to empty our accounts and run off with his secretary. I didn't even mean to see the emails. Kevin had asked me to send some files from his home office computer, and his Gmail was open. The subject line caught my eye. Divorce strategy. From his lawyer, Lawrence Hoffman. I should have closed it. That's what the old Giselle would have done. Respected boundaries, assumed the best. But something intuition, self-preservation, or maybe just the universe throwing me a lifeline, made me click. Kevin. As discussed, the key is timing. Transfer the remaining assets to the Cayman account before filing. The prenup is solid, but only if we can show that these business investments were separate property. Your wife has no experience in finance. She won't know what questions to ask. If you file by month end, we can have this wrapped up before she realizes what's happening. I sat there, the blood draining from my face, as I scrolled through months of correspondence between my husband of 12 years and his lawyer. The careful plans to hide assets. The strategy to overwhelm me during proceedings. The brutal assessment of me as financially naive. And then I saw the emails to Veronica, his executive assistant. The woman who had been in our home for dinner parties. Who had sent me a Christmas card with a picture of her golden retriever wearing reindeer antlers. Soon, baby. Another month and we'll be free. Just keep playing the loyal secretary a little longer. G still suspects nothing. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't break things, though God knows I wanted to. Instead, I took screenshots of everything, emailed them to an account Kevin didn't know about, and carefully returned his inbox to exactly as I'd found it. Then I bought the watch. The absurdly expensive watch that he'd never get to wear. Because if there's one thing I'd learned in 12 years of marriage to Kevin Reynolds, it was patience. And if he thought I was too stupid to protect myself, he was about to learn just how wrong he was. You seem distracted tonight, Kevin said, loosening his tie as he poured himself a scotch. Tough day with the charity ladies? I forced a smile, the same one I'd been practicing in the mirror for the 3 days since discovering his betrayal. Not too bright, not too strained. Just the slightly weary smile of a woman who had no idea her life was about to implode. Just finalizing the details for the children's hospital fundraiser, I replied, slicing vegetables with perhaps a bit more force than necessary. The usual drama with the seating arrangements. He nodded absently, already scrolling through his phone. I wondered if he was texting her, right in front of me. The audacity almost made me laugh. By the way, I said casually, I ran into Finn today at that new coffee place on Maple. Kevin's head snapped up. Finn Harrison was his business partner at Reynolds Harrison Financial, the investment firm they'd built from scratch 15 years ago. They'd been college roommates, best men at each other's weddings. If anyone knew where Kevin's financial bodies were buried, it would be Finn. Oh, how is he? Kevin's voice was carefully neutral. Good. We're having lunch next week. I want to pick his brain about getting more involved with our investments. I kept my tone light, breezy. I've been thinking I rely on you too much for the financial stuff. It's time I educated myself. The flash of panic in Kevin's eyes was brief but unmistakable. You don't need to bother Finn with that. I can explain anything you want to know. Oh, I know you could. But you're so busy, and besides, I slid the perfectly julienned carrots into the salad bowl. It'll be fun to surprise you with what I learn. For a moment, I thought I'd overplayed my hand. Kevin was watching me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. Then his phone buzzed, and the moment passed. Whatever makes you happy, babe, he said, turning back to his screen. Just don't let Finn talk you into anything risky. He's always been more aggressive with investments than I am. The lie rolled off his tongue so smoothly. In truth, Kevin was the risk-taker, the one who pushed for aggressive strategies, while Finn was the cautious one who'd repeatedly saved them from Kevin's wilder schemes. I wondered how many other lies I'd swallowed over the years. mistaking them for truth simply because I'd never thought to question them. Of course, darling, I said, adding the finishing touches to our dinner. I'll be careful. He's going to clean you out.
Giselle.
Finn's voice was grim as he pushed the stack of documents across the table in our private room at La Maison, an out-of-the-way French restaurant where Kevin would never think to look for us. After my accidental run-in with Finn, I'd asked for his help directly. I'd shown him the emails, explained my suspicions. At first, he'd been reluctant, torn between loyalty to his oldest friend and his own moral compass. But in the end, ethics won out. That, and the fact that Kevin's schemes had apparently extended to the business as well. I flipped through the pages, bank statements, transfer records, corporate minutes from meetings that had never actually occurred. How much has he hidden? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. At least 8 million, possibly more. Finn ran a hand through his salt and pepper hair. He's been siphoning funds for nearly 2 years. Not just marital assets, but company money too. I started noticing discrepancies about 6 months ago, but he always had explanations. I wanted to believe him. My stomach lurched. $8 million. More than enough to set up a new life with Veronica, while leaving me with the illusion of a fair settlement. The house, maybe, and a token alimony that would run out just as I realized how little I actually had. And the Cayman account? Harder to trace, but it exists. He's been making regular transfers, usually after big client payouts.
Finn hesitated.
Giselle, I have to ask, what do you want to do with this information? If we report the business fraud, Reynolds Harrison could collapse. Hundreds of jobs, client investments. I looked at Finn, really looked at him. He was risking everything by helping me, potentially destroying his own livelihood in the process. I don't want to ruin the business, I said finally. I just want what's fair. And I want Kevin to face consequences for what he's done. Finn nodded slowly. In that case, I have an idea. But it's risky, and you'll have to play a role perfectly.
Can you do that?
I thought about the watch, still wrapped and hidden in my closet. About the emails. About 12 years of partnership that Kevin had been willing to throw away without a backward glance. I've been playing the role of the happy, oblivious wife for weeks now. I said with a grim smile. I think I can handle a little more acting. Finn laid out his plan, and with each detail, I felt a strange sensation spreading through me, not just anger or hurt, but something like exhilaration. For the first time since discovering Kevin's betrayal, I felt powerful. One more thing, Finn said as we were leaving. Kevin thinks you're financially naive, and that's your advantage. But are you really comfortable with all this legal and financial maneuvering? It's going to get complicated. I smiled, thinking of the business degree I'd put aside when Kevin suggested I focus on more fulfilling, charity work instead. Of the investment books I'd read over the years. Partly out of interest, and partly because I'd always had a nagging sense that I should understand our finances better. Don't worry about me, I assured him. I'm a quick study. For the next 6 weeks, I lived a double life. By day, I was Giselle Reynolds, devoted wife and charity organizer, blissfully unaware that my marriage was on its last legs. I made Kevin's favorite meals, listened to his stories about work, and never once let on that I knew he was emptying our accounts and sleeping with his secretary. By night, I was a financial detective, working with Finn and a forensic accountant he trusted to document every hidden asset, every fraudulent transfer, every lie Kevin had told on paper. I educated myself on divorce law, on corporate finance, on exactly what rights I had after 12 years as the supportive spouse of a successful financial advisor. I also quietly reached out to Sophie, my college roommate who had become a fearsome divorce attorney in Chicago. She agreed to represent me, but suggested staying with local counsel on paper for now. Element of surprise, she explained. Let him think you've hired someone he can easily outmaneuver. The hardest part was maintaining the charade with Kevin. Every kiss felt like a betrayal, not of him, but of myself. Every time he casually mentioned our future, or made plans for the summer, knowing he intended to be gone by then. I had to swallow the urge to confront him. You're losing weight, he commented one evening, his tone somewhere between concerned and appreciative. That new Pilates class working out? What he didn't know was that I'd lost 10 pounds from stress and strategic planning sessions that often ran through mealtimes. That I'd started seeing a therapist twice a week to help me manage the rage and heartbreak without tipping my hand. Must be, I said with a shrug. Plus that meal delivery service I tried. He nodded, clearly not interested enough to ask follow-up questions. That was the thing about Kevin. He'd mastered the appearance of caring without the substance. He asked about my day, but never remembered details. Complimented my appearance, but couldn't name my favorite book. Claimed to support my charity work, but had attended exactly one event in the last 3 years. How had I not seen it sooner? The breaking point came when I overheard him on the phone with Veronica, thinking I was out at a committee meeting. I doubled back to retrieve forgotten papers and entered through the side door. The 15th, he was saying, his voice low and intimate in a way it hadn't been with me for years. Lawrence says everything will be in place by then. I'll serve her papers in the morning, and by evening, the transfers will be complete. She'll never know what hit her. The 15th, 3 days away. My hand tightened on the doorframe as I listened to my husband laugh about how devastated I would be, how he'd offer a slightly better settlement if I behaved, how Veronica should book their celebration trip to Bali for the following week. I backed out silently and drove to Finn's office, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. He's moving up the timeline, I told him, pacing the confines of his private conference room. We're out of time. Finn made a quick call to our forensic accountant, then turned to me with a grim expression. We're not ready. We haven't documented everything, and without complete records. Then we adapt. I interrupted. We use what we have and improvise the rest. Giselle, this isn't like planning a charity auction where you can wing it if the centerpieces don't arrive. This is your financial future. I stopped pacing and faced him directly. And it's your company too, Finn. If Kevin gets away with this, what else has he done that might come back to haunt Reynolds Harrison? We need to act now. After a long moment, Finn nodded. All right. Plan B it is. We worked through the night, finalizing documentation, coordinating with Sophie, and setting our counter-strategy in motion. By morning, I was exhausted but ready. Or as ready as anyone can be to blow up their life. The 15th dawned bright and clear, a beautiful spring day that seemed to mock the storm brewing in our household. I rose early, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen island in my robe, scrolling through my phone as if it were any other Thursday. Kevin appeared at 7:30, already dressed in one of his power suits, charcoal gray with a subtle pinstripe, his closing the deal outfit. I noticed he'd had a fresh haircut and was wearing the expensive cologne I'd given him for Christmas. Looking good for the big day, I thought bitterly. For a moment, I considered spilling coffee on his immaculate suit, but that would be too obvious. Instead, I smiled up at him. Morning, handsome. Big meeting today? He hesitated fractionally before pouring himself coffee. Actually, we need to talk, Giselle. Here it comes. That sounds serious, I said, widening my eyes in what I hoped was convincing concern. Is everything okay? He sat across from me, his expression grave but with an undercurrent of impatience, like an actor eager to get through a difficult scene. There's no easy way to say this. He began, not quite meeting my eyes. I've been unhappy for a long time. We've grown apart, and I think we both deserve a chance at real happiness. I let my coffee mug slip slightly, catching it before it spilled. What are you saying, Kevin? I want a divorce. For words, delivered with practiced solemnity. He'd rehearsed this, I realized. Probably with Veronica coaching him. A divorce? I whispered, letting my voice break. But why? Is there someone else? He had the decency to look uncomfortable, though not, I noted, particularly remorseful. That's not the point. The point is that our marriage isn't working, hasn't been working for years. I had no idea, I said, a tear sliding down my cheek right on cue. Thank God for those high school drama classes. I thought we were happy. Kevin sighed, reaching for my hand across the island. I let him take it, fighting the urge to recoil.
I'm sorry, Giselle.
I've had my lawyer draw up an agreement that's very fair. The house, a generous settlement. You'll be taken care of. I pulled my hand away, letting anger show through the hurt. That part required no acting. Just like that? 12 years, and you've already got divorce papers ready. He had the grace to look embarrassed. I wanted to make this as painless as possible.
When?
I demanded. When did you decide our marriage was over? When did you start planning this? It doesn't matter, he said, standing and retrieving a thick envelope from his briefcase. What matters is moving forward. My lawyer will be in touch with details, but the basics are outlined here. I'll be staying at the Four Seasons until things are settled. I stared at the envelope he placed before me, knowing exactly what inadequate settlement it contained. Then I looked up at my husband, this stranger I'd lived with for over a decade, and made my voice small and defeated. Can you at least give me the day to process this?
Before lawyers get involved?
He hesitated, clearly anxious to get the papers signed and the process moving. But rejecting such a reasonable request would make him the obvious villain in this scenario. Of course, he said finally.
Take today.
We can talk tomorrow. I nodded tearfully. And maybe don't tell people yet? I'm not ready for everyone to know. That's fine, he agreed, already edging toward the door, clearly desperate to escape the emotional scene. I'll call you tomorrow. When the front door closed behind him, I dropped the devastated act and pulled out my phone. He did it, I told Finn. Exactly like we expected. It's time for phase 2. By noon, I'd emptied our joint safety deposit box of the jewelry Kevin didn't know I knew about, pieces he'd bought as investments that were actually gifts for Veronica that she couldn't wear publicly yet. I'd transferred my personal belongings to a secure storage unit and copied every relevant financial document in the house. By 2, I'd met with a local attorney Kevin expected me to hire, a pleasant but not particularly aggressive older man who often handled divorces for our social circle. I signed initial paperwork with him, making sure Kevin would get word that I was behaving predictably. By 4, I was sitting in a conference room at Reynolds Harrison Financial, dressed impeccably in a cream suit that projected confidence without aggression. Beside me sat Sophie, who had flown in that morning, looking every inch the high-powered attorney in sharp black with red-soled shoes that probably cost more than most people's monthly mortgage payments. Across from us were Finn, the company's outside counsel, and 2 members of the board of directors who had been summoned for an urgent regulatory matter. Ms. Reynolds, began Howard Green, the eldest board member. While I sympathize with your marital difficulties, I'm not sure what this has to do with company business. Sophie smiled, the kind of smile that had made opposing counsel quake in courtrooms across 3 states. Mr. Green, my client isn't here about her marriage. She's here about financial fraud, corporate malfeasance, and the $8 million that Kevin Reynolds has systematically diverted from both company and personal accounts over the past 2 years. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Howard and Martin, the other board member, exchanged alarmed glances. That's a very serious accusation, Martin said carefully. It is, I agreed, opening the folder before me. Which is why we've brought evidence. Bank transfers to accounts in the Caymans. Falsified corporate minutes. Client funds moved through shell companies. And, most damning of all, emails between Kevin and his attorney discussing how to hide these assets during divorce proceedings. I laid out document after document, building the case methodically, the way Kevin had taught me to organize charity presentations for maximum impact. The irony wasn't lost on me. Mr. Harrison, Howard turned to Finn, his expression grave. Were you aware of these activities? Finn shook his head. I discovered discrepancies several months ago and began investigating privately. When Ms. Reynolds approached me with her concerns, we compared notes and realized the extent of the problem. And why bring this to the board today specifically? Martin asked, his shrewd eyes moving between Finn and me. Because Kevin filed for divorce this morning, I explained. And by tomorrow, he intends to complete the final transfers that will put millions beyond reach, not just from me, but potentially from the company and its clients as well. Howard removed his glasses, pinching the bridge of his nose. What exactly are you asking for, Ms. Reynolds? Sophie leaned forward. My client has no desire to damage Reynolds Harrison or its reputation. She's prepared to keep this matter private on 3 conditions. First, Kevin Reynolds is removed from operational control of the company, effective immediately. Second, a full audit is conducted to ensure all client funds are secure and properly accounted for. And third, a fair division of marital assets is negotiated in good faith, based on the true financial picture, not the manipulated one Kevin has created. The next 2 hours were a blur of technical discussions, legal consultations, and careful strategizing. By the end, we had an agreement in principle. The board would call an emergency session that evening to suspend Kevin pending investigation. Finn would assume temporary control of operations. And most importantly, all company assets would be frozen until a complete accounting could be conducted. As we left the building, Sophie squeezed my arm. Phase 2 complete. You did brilliantly in there. I exhaled shakily, the adrenaline that had carried me through beginning to ebb. I still can't believe we pulled that off. Oh, honey, Sophie grinned. We're just getting started. Now comes my favorite part, watching the rat realize he's trapped. Kevin called at 8:37 that evening, his voice tight with barely controlled fury. What the hell did you do? I was sitting in Sophie's hotel suite, a glass of excellent Pinot Noir in hand, feeling more centered than I had in weeks. Hello to you too, Kevin. I take it you've heard from the board? You went behind my back to my own company, he hissed. With some half-baked accusations and forged documents? Nothing was forged.
Kevin.
You know that better than anyone. I kept my voice calm, reasonable. Although I am curious which accusations you consider half-baked. The hidden Cayman accounts? The falsified corporate minutes? Or the emails where you discuss how to defraud both me and your clients? Silence stretched between us, broken only by the sound of his breathing, quick and shallow, like a cornered animal. This is a misunderstanding, he said finally, his tone shifting to something smoother, more placating. The voice he used to talk clients off ledges during market downturns. Look, I know the divorce came as a shock. I handled it badly. But bringing the board into our personal issues was unnecessary and irresponsible. I laughed, the sound genuinely amused. You mean like embezzling from your own company was unnecessary and irresponsible? Or planning to leave your wife destitute after 12 years of marriage was unnecessary and irresponsible? I was going to give you the house, he protested, a note of desperation creeping in. A generous settlement. A fraction of what I'm legally entitled to, I interrupted. And we both know it, just like we both know about Veronica. His sharp intake of breath confirmed what I'd suspected. He'd thought I remained ignorant of the affair, even now. How long have you known? He asked finally. Long enough to document everything. The money, the lies, the little love nest you've been setting up in the Caymans. I swirled my wine, watching the light play through the ruby liquid. You know what your mistake was, Kevin? Underestimating me. Thinking I was too trusting, too naive, too focused on charity luncheons to notice what was happening right under my nose. Giselle, please. His voice dropped to the intimate murmur that had once made my heart race. We can work this out. Just you and me. Without lawyers, without the board. I'll make it right. It's too late for that, I said, surprised to find I meant it. Any lingering affection I might have felt had been burned away by the weeks of deception, by the calculated cruelty of his plan. The board meeting ended an hour ago. You've been suspended pending investigation. All company accounts are frozen. And tomorrow morning, I'll be filing for divorce with Sophie representing me. Sophie? Who the hell is Sophie? Sophie Winters. I believe her reputation may have preceded her in legal circles. She's sitting right here, by the way. Says hello. Sophie raised her own wine glass in a mocking toast, though Kevin couldn't see it. You've lost your mind, he said flatly. You're going to destroy everything, the company, our reputation, our future, over wounded pride. I set down my glass, all pretense of amusement gone. No, Kevin. You destroyed everything when you decided to steal from your clients, cheat on your wife, and leave her with nothing. I'm just making sure you face the consequences. I ended the call before he could respond, my hand shaking slightly as I set down the phone. You okay? Sophie asked, her fierce expression softening. I nodded, surprised to find it was true. I think I am. For the first time in a long time. The next 3 months were a whirlwind of legal proceedings, financial investigations, and personal reckonings. Kevin fought back, of course, denied everything, claimed I was mentally unstable, even tried to paint Finn as the real culprit. But the evidence was too solid, the paper trail too clear. In the end, faced with potential criminal charges for financial fraud, he agreed to a settlement that gave me half of our actual assets. Not the pittance he'd initially offered. Reynolds Harrison survived, though with a new name, Harrison Financial, and a restructured leadership team that included 2 women on the executive board, one of whom was me. Yes, that was perhaps the sweetest twist. Finn had approached me about joining the company, leveraging my business degree and unexpected talent for financial forensics. We need someone with your eye for detail and capacity for strategic thinking, he'd said. And frankly, after what you pulled off, I'm a little afraid to have you as a competitor. Veronica had disappeared from Kevin's life the moment his assets were frozen, which surprised no one except possibly Kevin himself. Last I heard, she was dating a dermatologist in Phoenix. As for Kevin, the non-disclosure agreement that was part of our settlement prevents me from sharing the details of his current circumstances. But let's just say they're significantly less luxurious than he'd planned. The day our divorce was finalized, I finally unwrapped that birthday watch I'd bought so many months ago. I considered various symbolic gestures, smashing it, donating it, even sending it to Kevin as a reminder of what he'd lost. In the end, I sold it through a luxury consignment shop and used the money to fund a scholarship for women returning to business school after career interruptions. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just about getting even. It's about creating something meaningful from the wreckage. 6 months after discovering those emails, I stood in my new office overlooking the city, watching the sunset paint the skyline in shades of gold and pink. My desk held a single photograph, not of Kevin, not of our wedding day, but of my grandmother, a formidable woman who had survived the Depression, raised 5 children alone after my grandfather died young, and built a successful millinery business in an era when women entrepreneurs were rare. Always have your own money, she told me once, and always know where it is. I hadn't listened then, but I was listening now. A knock at my door pulled me from my thoughts. Finn stood there, case files in hand, his expression both apologetic and amused. Sorry to interrupt your contemplation, but we've got that client meeting in 10 minutes, and I could use your perspective on these projections. I smiled, gathering my notes and laptop. Lead the way. As we walked down the corridor toward the conference room, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the glass walls, shoulders back, head high, moving with a confidence I'd forgotten I possessed. I barely recognized myself, this woman who had faced betrayal and emerged stronger, who had turned crisis into opportunity. But then again, perhaps she had always been there, waiting for the chance to shine.